Hey, folks. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jeff Pennick. I'm an admissions advisor here at International TEFL Academy. And today I have Holly Vo, one of our alumni, with us. And we're going to discuss a bit about her experience teaching English in Chile. So we're excited to be here. Thank you very much, Holly. And why don't we just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everybody, my name is Holly. My Vietnamese name is Hugh, and I grew up in Vietnam. My family moved to the States 6 years ago. I graduated from the University of Maryland College Park with a BA in linguistics, and then I got my TEFL from ITA. Um, and before deciding to like settle down and have a full-time job here in the DMV area, I wanted to teach English abroad, and I found, so that's why I went for the TEFL, and then I just moved to Chile.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you decide that teaching English abroad was something for you?
So I think there are two main reasons. One is personal. I think it's because for me, I am an ESS learner myself,
Mhm.
and I started learning English when I was in the sixth grade back in Vietnam.
Okay.
Um, and I think when my family moved to the States, my mom didn't speak any English, my younger brother didn't speak any English, and I was the only person in the family that spoke some English at that time. But thanks to like my English proficiency, we were able to like get an apartment, get jobs, filling out paperwork and stuff like that. So I think I know that having knowledge in English would help open many doors and opportunities. And the second reason is because I just really love teaching. And teaching abroad gives me the opportunity to both teach and explore, different parts of the world at the same time.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. So, before heading abroad, what were some of the concerns you had, or at least before heading abroad to Chile?
So I've never been to Chile. I had not been to Chile before this trip. Um, so of course I was, like considering how safe the country is. Um, what are the differences between living and working styles between I mean the US and Chile and Vietnam too. So like I'm stuck between three countries. um, and of course like being on my own without my car. And well, now I speak some Spanish now after living in Chile for 5 months, but before that I didn't speak any Spanish. So I was wondering like how could I get like my phone credit or opening a bank account, but the program really did help us a lot.
Okay. All right. Great. And where in Chile are you currently living?
Well, actually, I came back home to Maryland 2 weeks ago. So my service term ended
Uh-huh.
um, on July 21st.
Okay. All
And
right.
when I was in Chile, I was placed in the south, in La Araucanía region. So it's from Santiago, you take a bus. It takes you around 7 hours, and then there's my town. It's called Victoria.
Uh-huh. All right. How was it living there?
So when I was there, so I had a 10-month winter,
Uh-huh.
from because I was in the U.S. and I was the winter, and then I came to Chile, and then there's still the winter in Chile because the opposite. So it was really really cold in the south. Um, so Victoria is a small town. So this
Uh-huh.
is the one thing that I think people who are applying or thinking to apply to this program should know is that when on the application, they will ask you what are your preferences, like where do you want to be placed, the north, the central, or the south of Chile?
Mhm.
Do you want to be urban or suburban or the rural area? But keep in mind that an urban city in Chile is not exactly New York or Chicago or DC here. So Victoria has around 40,000 people, and it's considered like a, a a city, I would
Yeah.
say,
Okay.
or like mid-sized cities. But actually, I would say it's more like, if you think about it here, it's more rural. Um, but it has all the necessities that you need: banks, restaurant, post office, bus stations. It's a very small town, so we could walk everywhere. I walk to my school every day. I have two schools. From my host family, it took me around 5 or 7 minutes to walk to each school.
Okay. All right. And going back to when you first, reached out to International TEFL Academy, can you explain a bit about your experience with IDA, about the, enrollment process and the job search process and guidance that you received?
Um, so I actually knew about English Open Doors program via my university. Uh, but then when I Googled it online, I saw that International TEFL Academy already has information about this program. So of course, it like reinforced me to keep reading more about it, and then eventually apply for it. However, I like before applying for EODP, I was thinking of going to Belgium to pursue a master degree, and I did reach out uh, to ITA for helping me with potential job search in Belgium, and I got really good support. But like eventually, I decided not to go to Belgium. So.
Okay. All right. And so for the English Opens Doors program, was that the only program or position that you applied for in Chile, or were you, applying and interviewing for other positions also?
For me, that was I only applied for it, and I got it.
Okay. All right. And so being a non-native English speaker, how did that affect things? Was there any consideration around that? Was it any, more difficult for you, or how did it go?
So I think, first of all, about the application and the interviewing process from the program, I would say that this program, they actually want people from all over the world to come to Chile to teach English. So it's not just for native speakers of English. Um, so because I think their belief is that English is now an international language.
Mhm.
So if you like, wherever you travel to, people will, we use English to communicate now. Um, and so, of course, that means that you will encounter many different accents, and not just American or British or Australian, right? So having English teacher, like ESL teacher, who have accents, is actually an asset, and not a disadvantage.
Mhm.
Um, and so this program, they don't require the applicants, or the teachers to be native speakers of English. In my cohort, um, it was VS1, volunteer service one, from March to July.
Mhm.
Um, half of us were American, and then there are like 3, 4 British, and then I'm Vietnamese. There's one Korean girl, one Malaysian, uh, one guy from Ghana, and 3 Nigerian, I think, and then Canadian, and people from all over Europe. So we are very diverse. And
Yeah.
then when I was in my community, in my town, living with my host family and taught at 2 schools, I would say not once had anybody treated me inappropriately just because I'm not a native speaker. Um, all the staff and all the teachers at my school really, really respected me, and they seek out my help when they need, some more help with like grammar, or like, speaking and listening advice, even for the Chilean English teachers there. And the students are like absolutely cute, like they they're just the best. Yeah. So I would say there was no discrimination when I was in Chile, job wise, like professional wise.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear that they, have that mindset, because I think it's so true. Um, with going through the process to get your visa, what did that look like? What was there, something that you had to apply for ahead of time before you arrived, or how did that process go?
So this is good news for everybody who's considering going to Chile through this program, because I can say if you're applying for just like a job from English school, but for this program, there was no challenges when it comes to the visa. So I applied to the embassy in DC.
Mhm.
Of course, you had like I had to start the process about 2 or 3 months, 2.5 months before flying to Chile. So everything has to be done before you even get the final like offer or the final placement.
Okay.
Uh, and you know you so in order to get the visa, which is not a work visa or a travel visa, it's
Okay.
the temporary resident visa
I
for you to
see.
be in Chile for I think half a year.
Okay.
So of course you need to get the fingerprint, FBI background check for that visa, and then I mean they once you start the online application for visa, the embassy will send you all the information. So you just follow and just check if you have everything on their list. And I think I waited for about 3 weeks. Then I came to the embassy and waited for like half an hour and got my visa. So everything was really really smooth.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So and the Central Volunteer Center in Santiago, they responded very fast to any emails I sent out asking for help. So I think this is not going to be a problem.
okay, great. And so it was with the Chilean embassy in Washington, D.C. that you were in touch with?
Yeah.
Okay. And then with that's a Vietnamese passport?
Yeah, I applied with a Vietnamese passport. The visa fee is also waived for the applicants of this program. So it could, I think I looked at the chart for like how much, like if you pay for this visa,
Mhm.
um, so like I saved several $100s.
Oh, that's definitely a big perk there. And so with this English Opens Doors program, what was your typical workday like?
So it's 30 hours every week. Um, and then among those 30 hours, you are expected. So I taught for 20, I think 20, oh, no, sorry, 35 hours. So you have to work 35 hours every week. 26 of that are class time. So you teach for 26 hours. 5 hours are planning time on your own. And then about 4 hours that you have to have English club.
Okay.
Um, I taught at two school, but my like most of the people, I think most of us had one school, so you spend all of this time at that school. But I had to split my time into school equally. Um, so my my schedule, I had to work from Monday to Friday every day, so some hours every day. But I know that my friends, um, some people don't have classes on, let's say, Wednesday. Some don't have classes on Friday. So it depends on the school that you're placed at and how their schedule is.
Hmm. Okay. All right. And you said you would just walk to school?
Yeah, I just walk to school. That's but so like I talk so like I also want to share other people in my cohort's experiences. I have asked for their permission already. So I know that so like for me I walk 5 10 minutes to school. I know some people they had to take a bus for an hour to
Oh,
go to
wow.
school, which is in a different town or a different city, and then 1 hour to go back.
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, so the experience really varied from town to town and from school to school.
Okay. And how old were the kids that you were teaching?
So for me, I taught básico. So básico is like from so básico school you have pre-kindergarten to eighth grade, but
Okay.
for us for the program we are only teaching fifth grade and above. So I taught fifth grade to eighth grade because this is an elementary school, and I also TA for third grade and fourth grade. So I so for so if the kids are younger than fifth grade, we are not allowed to be in the classroom with them. So we can only TA for the English teacher.
Uh-huh.
So I taught fifth grade to eighth grade.
Okay. Did you have a favorite age group?
Yeah, definitely my fifth graders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're just like they're so innocent and like pure and just lovable and just they just bring so much joy to my life.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and yeah, like I really like Chilean children. I think I could totally see the differences between Vietnamese students, I'll say, and Chilean is that I do think that Chilean students are really warm and I think it's the Chilean culture. They get close to you physically, and that's just their lifestyle, their way. Because even when you greet them, like so in Chile, when you greet somebody, it's not just stand over here and hi. No, like
Yeah.
you get close and then you kiss on the cheek. So that's how close they are. And yeah,
Yeah.
I just
So yeah,
that's
very warm and welcoming. It made you feel. All right.
um oh,
Eh, They made you feel very warm and welcoming. So you were mentioning, even as a non-native speaker, when you were in the classroom and just in your daily life, they were still, even as an English teacher, they were still, very respectful, and there was no like different, treatment or anything like that.
yeah, I would say in treatment, like from person to person, there was no discrimination.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say that, of course, and this is like an advice from me to people who are going to teach in Chile, let's say, is that there will be a very big difference in working style or the work cultures at a Chilean school versus from from the US. So
Okay.
that's something that everybody has to be really flexible for, and be willing to adapt yourself. It's really easy to say it like, oh yes, I'm flexible, but then when you're put in the situation and the
Sure.
difference is vast and you don't even speak the language, like so that's just much harder, because this program EODB, they don't require you to speak Spanish in order to apply for the program. So many of us don't speak Spanish going down there. um, so yeah, like when you have differences and conflicts and you don't even have a common language to solve the problem, you
Hmm.
really have to be flexible, understanding, and keep in mind that you're in their home, you're in their country.
Hmm.
So of course, I try to reach out to the central volunteer center in Santiago for them to act as the person that solved the problem between, let's say if I have a problem between me and my head teacher, then I will ask the office in Santiago to intervene. Um, but but only if I cannot solve that problem with my head teacher, you
Okay.
know. So sure, my Spanish is limited and their English is also limited, but we have Google Translate and we have different kind of body language and just try to find a common ground between for
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think definitely anyone looking to move abroad, teach abroad, being open and flexible is one of the key components to being successful. All right. So with the English Opens Doors program being volunteer based, um, did you have another source of income, or did you have enough to support yourself financially? How was that?
So I want to share this with everybody who's thinking about this program is that so this is a volunteer program. They give a stipend. Um, so basically, you can choose to live on your own, or you can choose to live with a Chilean host family. Now, the stipend that the program gives to either living on your own or living with a host family is the same amount. However, if you choose to live with a host family, then I think about two-thirds of that stipend will go to the host family in order for them to cover 3 meals a day, water, internet, utility that you have to use when you're staying with them. If not, then of course all the stipend will be given to you. However, I don't think the stipend, if you choose to live independently, will be enough to cover rent and then food and transportation, phone bill, Wi-Fi bill, everything. So that's the first thing that we need to be aware of, is the stipend, a very small amount of stipend. Um, so in my case, I lived with a host family, right? So I got the remaining of the stipend, and that is around $100 a month. Um, that's the first thing. Now the second thing is, with this visa, you are not allowed to work or to apply for another job in Chile.
Mm-hmm.
So you are not legally eligible to apply for jobs in Chile.
Uh-huh.
Make money, because the only reason why we get this temporary resident visa to be in Chile is because we are part of this program. So when we're in Chile, we can only work, at our schools. Um, so I want to say that if you are considering, like, thinking about applying to Chile and go through this program, you need to make sure you have enough money to cover yourself for 4 months or 5 months being in Chile.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the living expenses, I would say, if you're not in Santiago, everywhere else in Chile is pretty cheap, really, really cheap. I would say and also because you got 3 meals from your host family already, so you don't actually have to spend more money for food. Of course, if you need more food, then you have to buy for yourself. But it's cheap. So, and if you travel on the weekend to other regions, other cities, then that's on you. But just keep in mind that the stipend is only supposed to be enough for you to buy some extra food
Mm-hmm.
normal supermarket, or, like, not fancy restaurant,
Yeah.
and maybe purchasing some extra teaching materials, and not for you to live comfortably. I would say it's not extra in order for more comfort.
Mm-hmm.
um, and everything else you just have to budget yourself. And keep in mind, you are not allowed to apply for another job at the same time. Like, you can't work for the school and having like a part-time job or a weekend job at a coffee shop or something. That's not allowed.
Okay. Would sometimes people still maybe try to have like students that they private tutored on the side, something like that, or even teaching English online?
Yes, I didn't have any, um, but I know that some of my friends, they, like, their students or other young people in town approach them and ask them to private tutor them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think some people did do that. Um, as for teaching English online, so I think teaching online, you are not actually violating the visa rule because it's online, right? Uh, but I would say, don't, before coming to Chile, do not think that you can do this, because many of the Chilean host families don't have Wi-Fi.
Okay.
The
Great point.
rural area, there may not even be an internet cafe. Your
Mm-hmm.
school, the schools are supposed to have Wi-Fi, but that's not always the case. Or, like, sometimes it's, oh, the Wi-Fi is not working today or this week or this month. And of course, the Chilean host family don't always have Wi-Fi. It maybe they have it, but maybe they don't have it at all. Or I have a friend who, she was living with this host family, and they had Wi-Fi for like 2 months out of 4 months,
Okay.
and it's not they are not obligated to give us Wi-Fi, so you can't ask for that. So don't think that you can make money teaching English online until you're in the host family and know for sure that you have access to Wi-Fi.
Okay. All right. And how was living with your host family? What was your accommodation like?
Um, for me, from my own experience, I would say I was extremely, extremely lucky, because my Chilean host family was simply the best. Um, I say this because many of my friends in the cohort have asked me to also, like, mention their experience, and for everybody to be aware of, is that when it comes to host family, it's really like gambling, because many people, 2 people actually left the program because the conditions was pretty bad. Um, and I like one friend got money stolen, and some other differences in culture, like um, uh, so when we are having the orientation, when we were having the orientation, they said that Chilean family is like really close knit, and they're very warm, and they would talk to you all the time. So we were okay with that, of course, right? We know that, but then there was one friend, her family really didn't talk to her at all, didn't eat with her for like 4 or 5 months, and the isolation was intense because it's not like you are teaching English in like Tokyo where you can just go out and go to thousands of restaurants and thousands of shopping centers. When you're placed in a small rural town in Chile and the only family there don't even talk to you, it could drive you insane. The isolation is crazy. So my own family, they were great, very comfortable, very warm, friendly, generous. But that's just because I was extremely, extremely lucky. So
Okay.
it's just something for people to
Sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. And as far as finances, how much would you say someone needs to, think about bringing to not only for savings to start out, but also how much do you think someone would need to earn to live month to month?
So if you're in this program, you can okay, let's see. On a monthly basis, you don't even have to spend money if you don't need anything outside of having a place to live, having 3 meals a day, having shower, electricity, and like that, because the host family will provide all the basic necessities for you, so you don't actually have to spend money. You
Okay.
don't have but of course, like we want to spend more money. So I would say maybe having an extra $100 on
Okay.
top of the stipend, like
Uh-huh.
maybe a 200. I would say you would be okay living for 1 month in Chile, except you live in Santiago. Like if you live in Santiago, of course it's the capital. Everything is much more expensive. But like I said, even so, if you don't want to spend extra money, you don't need to. You wouldn't need to because the family is supposed to give you all the basics already.
Okay. Yeah.
Having a 200 extra would be good.
Okay. Yeah, and as you've said a couple of times, the cost of living outside of Santiago is substantially lower
Yeah.
compared to the capital city. So, what would you say is the most common question you get asked from your friends about teaching English abroad?
I would say everybody has been asking me how were the kids,
Uh-huh.
and I mean I don't have enough vocabulary to describe them. I mean, I just show my friends and family my Instagram account. I have an Instagram for work, so I've been posting their photos up there, or like my classroom decorations. So okay, I should mention this. So one of the first tasks, the initial task when we arrive at our city and then see our school, is that you have your own classroom, which you have to decorate. Um, so I, take photos of my classroom and my lesson plan, because the conditions also vary from school to school. So some school you have a projector and Wi-Fi, but some school you don't. So you have to make your own like board, like lesson poster. So yeah, I just when they ask me how were the kids, I would say, okay, look at these photo and look how happy they are, how happy we were when we were learning, and that's just, I would say there were so many moments that were extremely challenging for me back in Chile, and for all of my friends as well. But all of us, when we, at the end of the service term, when we came back to Santiago before going on our own ways, when we share stories, sure, we vent a lot. People drank a lot of wine for reasons. But whenever we mention our kids, we would just say it was all worth it
Yeah.
for the kids. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And what's one piece of advice you would give to someone thinking about teaching English abroad?
Um, I think I've said this before, but I think we have to, when we come to a different country, we have to respect their lifestyle. We're not coming to show them a new way of living a life, or a new way of doing things, or a new way of teaching. We're just coming to offering a hand, some support for them. Be really flexible, and as I said, it's easier said than done. I think sometimes I have to be like, okay, so this is Holly, but maybe I should turn this Holly off and just like have like a blank mind and try to look at this thing from a Chilean perspective instead of from an American or Vietnamese perspective. Um, and really, I think also think about your main purpose. So for me, I was there to teach. I was there for the kids. So that's my purpose, despite of things that may happen along the way. So sometimes you fight for your right, sometimes you fight for what you deserve, but sometimes you just simply turn a blind eye, go home, sleep, and then the next morning you just come back to school and see your kids again.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for sharing all of that information. That's just a really awesome story. We are about finished with time today, but thanks everyone at home for joining us, Holly, and it just sounds like that was a life-changing and really incredible experience you had in Chile. So thank you, and so long, folks.